Hello everybody, welcome to another Versus Video Deck Tech. CVM here, joined once again
by
BBD, and we're battling with some sweet standard cards. So I am going to be battling with Red-Green Aggro, and this is a deck that I've been advocating for the last couple of weeks. Played it a bunch on stream, wrote it about it this week if you want to check out my article. And I wasn't able to go to Memphis, and I'm surprised that this deck didn't do very well outside of like IQs and PTQs. Memphis and LA didn't have very many copies of this deck, and I felt like it was well positioned against what did well at those events. So that's why I'm a little confused why there weren't many copies of it there. But basically this is like the old green-red monsters deck. However, instead of playing Sylvan Caryatid and maxing on 4s and 5s, we're using Elvish Mystic and then maxing on 3s. So we have Flamewake Phoenix, Goblin Rabblemaster, and Boon Satyr to be able to cast ahead of curve. But the great thing about these creatures are, even if you don't play them on 2, they're still going to be fine on 3 and later.
Yeah, especially Boon Satyr.
Yeah, Boon Satyr we're going to be able to bestow. Flamewake Phoenix is just a great threat, and Rabblemaster is just great at any point in the game.
Yeah.
Going up further from that, we have another new card with Shaman of the Great Hunt, which is, besides Flamewake Phoenix, I think the new card that makes this deck. It's just a very good threat, and it's one of the cards that helps us punish all of these slow mana bases in the format. So there are going to be a lot of games where we're going to be on the play, and we'll play Mystic on 2, or Mystic on 1, and then any creature on two, be it an Heir of the Wilds or one of our 3-drops, and then on 3 we get to play Shaman of the Hunt, and our opponent will have 2 lands in play, and we'll have like 12 power of creatures in play.
Yeah, they'll just
like
be dead.
It just really punishes all of these slow come into play tap lands that are in the format, and I don't think there's a card that punishes those types of draws even nearly as good as Shaman of the Great Hunt.
Yeah, Shaman of the Great Hunt's a card that I've actually just been very impressed with, and I think it's definitely a very underrated card in Standard. And I played Green-Red Devotion last weekend in Memphis, and I wish that I had played something more along these lines, because most of the games I was winning were games where I just like beat them down with Polukranos and Whisperwood Elemental, and something like Shaman of the Great Hunt would have just been phenomenal in that deck, and that's not even a deck built around it.
Yeah. Now it's not even so much just the 4/2 with haste. Like you connect with it, it becomes a 5/3, which is definitely formidable. But it also pumps the rest of your creatures that connect that turn. So Goblin Rabblemaster and the tokens get bigger. Heir of the Wilds gets bigger. I even had a game on stream last week where I sandbagged a Shaman of the Great Hunt to where I was able to put it in play alongside a dragon and make my dragon a 5/5, so they couldn't get Stoke the Flames. So
yeah,
like there was just no card in my opponent's red-white deck that could actually kill the dragon at that point. So it just does a whole lot, and to be fair, I played, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 matches with this deck. Not once have I activated his ability to draw cards. I'm just attacking and casting threats.
Yeah.
Like it might as well have been something else, but it's nice that it's there if you need it.
Yeah, I mean, there are going to be some rare situations where you do draw some cards, but yeah, I don't think I've ever actually seen someone do that. Or if they do, they're really far behind. But usually, yeah, it's just there as a hasty threat that makes all your other cards better.
Yep, and that goes along with the rest of the haste creatures. Flamewake Phoenix, the token from Rabblemaster, Big Daddy Stormbreath Dragon. I've just been really impressed with Shaman of the Great Hunt, even so to the point where I have a split between that and Ashcloud Phoenix, and I'm playing more Shamans than I am Ashcloud Phoenix.
Yeah, and I think that Ashcloud Phoenix is one of those cards that's, I guess Shaman falls in the same boat too, where these cards are just extremely punishing to your opponent when you're currently ahead. They're not as good when you're losing. Both Shaman and Ashcloud like fit into that same shell, but I feel like Shaman's probably just even better when you're ahead than Ashcloud is.
Absolutely.
So.
And Ashcloud is marginally better when you're behind, but
it is, yeah.
Can still be pretty stainsy.
Yeah.
We do have some burn spells, since I do feel like the format is pretty Goblin Rabblemaster centric. So we have our Lightning Strike is a way to handle them, and only 3 Crater's Claws. So a lot of these lists will max out on Crater's Claws just because honestly it's a great card. It's Fireball plus.
I mean, Fireball's just really good right now. Crater's Claws is just really good right now.
Absolutely. After playing a bunch with the deck, though, I felt like I was getting clogged. a lot of them are getting clogged in my hands
Yep.
when you drew multiple, because the first one is usually going to be good enough, and I was lacking enough early ways to interact with my opponent. So that's why we have a Wild Slash in the main. Wild Slash is very, very good, and I could even see going to 2 strike, 2 slashes. The main thing that makes me want to keep 3 lightning strikes isn't so much Fleece Mane Lion, but it's the fact that strike can kill a Seeker the way through a spell. That's the most important fact. If it was just Fleece Mane Lion that you were worried about with Lightning Strike, I would be fine playing 2 and 2. But being able to kill Seeker through a spell is just way too important.
And I also think that another consideration is like Jeskai decks with Mantis Rider have become a lot more popular lately.
Yep.
And having Mantis Rider is actually a giant problem for a deck like this. And having access to a removal spell that kills it that doesn't cost 4 mana is actually pretty relevant.
And speaking of Jeskai, that is the reason we are back to a Polukranos in the main. So a lot of these decks just don't play Polukranos anymore. The card just hasn't been seeing a lot of play. But with Jeskai becoming more popular, Polukranos is a great card against them. It's also pretty good against Red-White, even though it's vulnerable to Chain to the Rocks. Everything in the deck except Dragon is vulnerable to Chain to the Rocks. But Polukranos is very good against Jeskai. It can put on a lot of pressure. They can't really block it profitably. And we can even kill like a Goblin Rabble Master once we hit 5 mana.
Yeah, I think Polukranos is actually in a very well positioned right now.
I agree, which is why we have 1 in the main and some more in the sideboard. As for the lands, the only unique thing that you're going to see here is I have 3 Mana Confluence, whereas most decks play only 1 or 2, and 0 copies of Rugged Highlands. We do have a lot of green and red mana costs in the deck, but I felt like having the extra Mana Confluence will help with that. And after playing a bunch of games with this deck, I want to cast my spells on curve every single time, and having more than just the 4 temples that come into play tapped have hurt me much more than the 1 life has helped me.
Yeah, and in fact, I actually think that if possible, you would play 0 temples, but you just have you need to have that effect.
I would play Karplusan Forest over Temple of Abandon.
Absolutely, yeah. You need to have the effect to provide both red and green mana, and temple's definitely better because sometimes the scry actually helps you.
Relevant.
But even playing a green-red devotion, I didn't want 4 temples. I just wanted almost 0. It hurt me so much because, especially with a deck like this, you want to curve out, and any hand with a temple, any hand that has both a temple and an Elvish Mystic often has trouble curving out properly. Temple's great if you don't have Elvish Mystic, but your best draws include Elvish Mystic. So,
yep.
And I like Mana Confluence a lot. Maybe even 4 might even be right, even though it's a lot, because the ability to go turn 1 Elvish Mystic, turn 2 Flamewake Phoenix is only possible through Mana Confluence. So I think that having access to that card is really good in this deck.
For sure, and that's the other interaction that has came up a lot, whether it be when writing about the deck or when streaming it. A lot of people see Flamewake Phoenix and Elvish Mystic and just want to immediately write off Phoenix, say, Fanatic of Xenagos or something like that is going to be better. Phoenix doesn't have to be cast on turn 2, and it's extremely resilient, and it gets in a lot of damage, which is something that this deck wants to do. Because we have all these haste creatures, we have the dragons, and we have fireballs and lightning strikes, just getting damage in on our opponent is going to be the most important thing. We are not very well set up to fight an attrition war, so we just want to get them dead, and that's what Phoenix does much better than something like Fanatic of Xenagos. It's never going to be what you need it to be, so it doesn't let you actually build a cohesive game plan.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and take a look at the sideboard and see what kind of options we have in a deck like this that is just a solid 2 colors, but focused on aggression. All right, we are back with the sideboard for the red-green aggro deck, and as you can see here, we have just a bunch of 1 and 2 ofs.
Yep.
And I find that I enjoy having plans like that with these aggressive decks because we're not really wanting to alter our game plan too much when we're sideboarding. So we have 2 more Wild Slash to up our early game interaction against the aggressive decks. Same with the Arc Lightning. It's also very good against opposing Rabble Masters and Hurling Outburst. We do have a Fated Conflagration, which is great at killing Polukranos. It's also great at killing Corsair Crewfix and Siege Rhino.
Yes.
But you can also use it to kill something like Elspeth, and those cards usually tend to be in the same deck. So that's why I like having Fated Conflagration. It's also good because it can kill Stormbreath Dragon and Brimaz out of the red-white deck, which is very relevant too. And then we have a Barrage of Boulders. So this card is gets a lot of questions, and in this deck, it's much better than Scouring Sands. I think in general, Scouring Sands is probably going to be a better card if you can't utilize the Ferocious, because it's just 1 mana cheaper for the same effect. But in this deck, a lot of times we are going to be utilizing the Ferocious as a way to kill our opponents, especially since we want this card primarily against Hornet Queen.
Yeah.
So we're able to combat Hurling Outbursts with things like Arc Lightning and just overloading the ground with better creatures, but Hornet Queen is a big pain in our side, and Barrage of Boulders lets us kill the Hornet Queen tokens, but also the Hornet Queen decks we're just going to build up a board on each side, and the Ferocious will let us kill them.
Yeah, Barrage of Boulders is the absolute scariest card to play against from the perspective of like a Green Devotion deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, not only does it kill Hornet Queen tokens, it usually just kills them.
Yep. We do have some Planeswalkers here in the middle row. Chandra Pyromaster, just a great card advantage engine. Lets us push damage through against the Courser of Crufix decks. And it's also very good against the Hurling Outburst decks. Sarkhan's, again, just Stormwrath Dragons 5 and 6 basically. Resilient threats. It's a way to kill Courser of Crufix against the Courser decks, but it also kills Stormbreath Dragon and Brimaz against Red-White, which is relevant.
Yeah, there are a lot of decks where like Stormbreath's not really that great, but Sarkhan actually is really good. Decks that are just going to be having like tons of like cuts and things like that.
Yep.
But like playing Sarkhan, killing their Courser, and then now forcing them to still waste a downfall on it or just take a bunch of damage is like much better than just casting a dragon into a removal spell.
Absolutely. And then we have 2 Xenaghost the Reveler. So this is a card that has fallen off a little bit in these builds. And to be honest, up until last week I was playing Whisperwood Elemental on the sideboard,
Yep.
which is a very good card. But Sarkhan is great in the exact same matchups, but it works with the rest of our deck much better.
Yeah.
So we're still able to generate a bunch of threats. It's even more resilient than Whispered Elemental, as they have to use a downfall against it, and they can't use something like an Abzan Charm or Murderous Cut to get rid of it. Plus, the +1 is absolutely backbreaking when your deck is full of hasted creatures and fireballs. So I've been really happy with Xenaghost. We have a Reclamation Sage and a Destructive Revelry as ways to answer troublesome artifacts and or enchantments like Whip of Erebos. But the Reclamation Sage is something that I have been advocating, and I'm happy that I've switched over to it. Against the Abzan control decks, you really want to have a card that can answer an early Courser of Crufix, because our deck is not very well positioned against Courser. But we don't just want like a dead Destructive Revelry in our hand. So having a Reclamation Sage as a way to kill a Courser, but also just make a 2/1 that can attack, has been really good. And then 2 more Polukranos, as Jeskai is getting more and more popular, and I think that Polukranos is just very well positioned right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a fantastic creature. It's still, I mean, it's not Siege Rhino, and like once Siege Rhino came out, people pretty much stopped playing Polukranos, but I mean, before Siege Rhino, it was the best thing you could do for 4 mana, so it's still pretty good.
And it still fights with Siege Rhino pretty well.
Yeah,
like
it actually
it
does outclass Siege Rhino by itself.
So the Siege Rhino decks have plenty of removal that can handle it, but our deck overloads the removals, so eventually they'll run out.
Yeah, the best way to play against those decks is to either underload the removal, where they're just stuck with all these removal spells, and you're playing like things like Planeswalkers that don't care about it, or just play too many things that they can't kill them all. One of them finally will stick, and Polukranos is one of those like things you would hope to stick.
Absolutely. So that's the sideboard for the red-green aggro deck. I'm excited to battle with it. I've been playing it all week. I'm interested to see how it matches up against Saito's mono black humans deck.
Yep.
Yeah, make sure you guys check out BBD's deck tech for his humans deck, and hop over to the matches and
See how it goes.
see what happens.